Sri Lanka, a glorious island nation situated in the South Asian region, is well known among the world for various reasons over the course of time. During the colonial era, Ceylon was famous in the Western market for its exotic spices and tea. Post-independence, the island grasped the international attention on its 30 years of civil war. With the end of the civil conflict in 2009, Sri Lanka's economic and political stability emancipated itself and attracted numerous foreign investors and tourists from the nook and corner of the world. Shattering all the hopes and expectations, the notorious Easter bomb attacks blowed out the tourism industry completely in 2019. Without having enough duration to digest the shock, the country again devastated by the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. The small tropical island again has become the center of attraction of the world today for a whole different reason this time. Sri Lanka is indeed a treasure island which obtains a wide variety of geographical aspects, including sandy coastal belts, dense wilderness, plains, and mountains with a microclimate that includes dry, intermediate, and wet zones within an area of just 65,610 square kilometers. Sri Lanka, as a tropical island, is gifted with minerals such as limestone, graphite, phosphate, precious stones, and mineral sands. The mixed microclimate and geography enables a vast variety of crops to be grown, such as paddy, coconut, palm, rubber, spices, and tea. The country consists of approximately 22 million of population, which provides itself a good labor force base. Still, at the moment, this glorious island has been fallen on to a great economic and political crisis. Sri Lanka has already experienced a similar kind of economic crisis in 1970s due to different reasons from the current crisis.
I remember that early 1970s we had to face this type of economic crisis. At that time, there was a lack of essential foods, fuel, etc. So, however, the reasons behind that crisis was different from the present crisis. Crisis in early 1970s was backed by global economic recession.
After years of military spending had come to an end, Sri Lanka achieved an average GDP growth rate of 7.6% during the period of 2010 to 2012. The country managed to halve the number of people living in absolute poverty. These improvements, combined with low population, led to gradual and steady in per capita income. Government launched a comprehensive public investment program to elevate the infrastructural development with the help of foreign donors. It included road and rail development, ports, aviation, and power production. The economy was rapidly driven by non-structural and non-tradable sectors such as port operations, tourism, construction, and finance. During the phase, the economy was even called as a development success story by the World Bank. Nonetheless, within a span of 10 years, Sri Lanka has started facing its so far worst economic fall down. Where did it went wrong? Is it all because of the pandemic, as said by the Sri Lankan government?
Present situation does not arise due to natural disaster or war, something like that, or the global situation, but I'm saying that this is the man-made crisis. This was made by mainly the rulers of this country.
The crisis showed its visible signs to the general citizens immediately after the ban of agrochemical fertilizers in April 2021. The government implemented an overnight policy change to ban the import of agrochemical fertilizers and to shift to organic fertilizers. This heavily affected the annual harvest and created a threat of food insecurity. Though the government linked the move as for the interest on health, experts said that it was to save the $300 million to $400 million of foreign exchange that was critically getting low.
Using organic fertilizer is a good practice. Most of the countries use organic fertilizer, but at very low rate. Sometimes 1-2% of total. But in 2001, April 2001, by one night, the government completely shifted from inorganic fertilizer to organic fertilizer. This was badly affected the entire sector and the living standard of the people. This is one of the reasons lead to this food crisis. Paddy production declined by more than 5 or 50%. In addition to that, it affected on the tea sector, rubber sector, coconut, vegetable, flour, and so all the agricultural and other farming sectors were badly affected in this decision. It led to increase the shortage of foreign exchange because these imports such as tea, rubber, etc. decline.
Sri Lanka has been a country with a high consumption behavior, which pays more for its imports than its revenue. Dollar shortage led to shortage of LP gas and other essential fuels in the latter part of 2021 and led to a scheduled power cut in the country. The shortage of foreign exchange is getting worse despite the restriction imposed on the imports of non-essential things. The shortage of foreign exchange is induced by the long-term policy mismanagement which is exposed in the pandemic situation.
The immediate reason for this crisis is the lack of or shortage of foreign reserves or dollars. In 1977, our policy orientation shifted from inward-looking policies to outward-looking policies. Large number of countries have gained benefit of this open economic policy, but in our case, rulers of the country did not make any attempt to preserve or protect the domestic industries and to build the national economy. As a result, import expenditure continuously increasing higher rate than export earnings. See the trade balance, you can see that during the last 2 decades, there is a 10 billion US dollars deficit in the trade balance. What government did is that they settle this gap by using the remittance earnings from tourism and borrowing.
According to Professor Sena Singha, the Sri Lankan government has over-relied on the tourism income, especially after the civil war, which they used to manage filling the budget deficiency gap. But with the incident of Easter bombing, the industry was falling. With the closure of international borders due to the pandemic, the tourism, which was a major income earning source, completely dropped down.
Annually, we obtain 4 billion US dollars from tourism. But with the Easter Sunday attack, tourism industry completely collapsed. We lost this income. At the end of 2020, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, again it directly hit on the tourism market and also production and service sector of the economy.
Another significant policy fault that the experts highlight is the tax cut policy introduced by the new government elected in 2020. The government reduced several vital taxes and granted tax exemptions and tax holidays, which led to significant loss of government revenue.
Meantime, newly elected government in 2019, under the new tax policy, reduced number of taxes. VAT reduced from 15 to 8%. Corporate tax reduced from 5%. In addition to that, some other taxes such as nation building, NBT, etc. were removed. Because of this, the government lost 6 billion rupees annually. This is about 2% of GDP.
As an adverse result of this policy, the GDP rate declined from 12.7% to 8.7% within 3 years, while the budget deficit raised from 9.6% to 12.2%, and the debt to GDP ratio increased from 86.9% to 104.6% during the same period of time. In addition to the policy faults, it cannot be denied that Sri Lanka's economic failure was a result of long-term corruption and bribery. Usually, the cases on financial scandals, corruptions, and bribery were closed by government influencers and the accused were released. Also, politically influenced public organizations prioritized political interests over public interest during decision-making processes.
We are blaming only for the politicians, but they cannot do these things without the help of officials. The high-level officials must also responsible for these corruptions. One of the universally accepted norm is that financial authority of the government must be independent. In the case of Sri Lanka, Central Bank is the financial authority. But unfortunately, during the last 2 decades, it has been politicized. The governors of the Central Bank appointed considering not the professional skills but the political partiality. Therefore, they take decisions not for the betterment of the country but for the pleasure of the politicians.
With the high shortage of fuel, the Sri Lankan government continued printing domestic currency on a higher rate in order to pay for purchasing dollars needed to import essentials. Then, the governor of Central Bank of Sri Lanka said that printing of money will not affect in the inflation.
Further, the present government decided to print money in large extent, following modern monetary theory. In fact, the modern monetary theory says that creating money is not make influence on the inflation and reserves of countries like USA, because the currency of USA is dollars. Dollars are using for international transactions, and dollars are used to store value. Therefore, the countries like USA, the MMT is applicable to the countries like USA, but it is not applicable to us. The huge increase of inflation. Now you know that we are facing hyperinflation, more than 50% according to the official rates. Food inflation is 80%, transportation inflation is 128%. One of the reasons for this huge increase of inflation is the printing of new money.
The inflation rate skyrocketed within a short span of 3 months. During the months of May and June, the inflation growth rate based on Colombo Consumer Price Index was 15.5%. The food inflation growth rate was 22.7%. The non-food inflation rate was 11.8%, and the overall annual average inflation growth rate during the 2 months was 4.2%. This hyperinflation condition is continuously leading to the creation of black market. Though most of these faults were identified and the potential crisis was predicted, the government wasn't ready to listen, which turned out an immense mistake on its side.
In January or February, as I remember, government has to settle $500 million for intellectuals, academics, businessmen, and some politicians also said that don't repay this amount and discuss to restructure this loan. But the governor did not take into account this. He paid ISB using the reserves. The government advised by the non-peoples to approach the IMF, because they know that it is politically disadvantage for them. Therefore, they intentionally delayed to go for the IMF.
Sri Lanka is critically in need of foreign exchange to normally function as a country, while the only possible and immediate source is being seeking for international credits and aids. Nevertheless, Sri Lanka has gone into a complicated debt trap even before the crisis.
Since 1977, we were running with huge budget deficit. Sometimes it ranged between 6% to 12% of GDP. What government did was to fulfill or settle this gap, this deficit, was borrow money from the local financial and non-financial sources and foreign sources, sometimes at a high interest rate. The year 2000, our external debt was only $9 billion. It has increased up to $21 billion by 2010. Again, it has increased to 44 billion dollars by 2015. Within 5 years, the external debt has increased by $23 billion. It has increased again by 2020 to 56 billion US dollars.
In the debt composition of Sri Lanka, 47% is from market borrowings, 13% from the Asian Development Bank, and 10% is from China. Sri Lanka's largest creditor country is China by lending $3.4 billion of credits. Sri Lanka's keen focus on large infrastructure projects, which were built on huge foreign debts, triggered to the debt trap in the long run. Projects such as conference halls, Lotus Tower, stadiums, Hambantota Port, and Mattala Airport became huge white elephant projects, generating zero revenue. Therefore, the country's current total debt has reached to $51 billion as an end of June 2022. Yet, Sri Lanka is in a condition of not able to pay even the interests of the debts.
Government borrow money mainly from China for the unprofitable, economically ineffective infrastructure projects. Sometimes 6% interest. Earlier, as I said earlier, before doing this, we borrow money from the multilateral agencies and under the bilateral agreement at very small nominal interest rate and long repayment period, sometimes 30 to 40 years. But money obtained from the capital market, we have to repay within 5 years time with higher profit, higher interest rate. We are keen to obtain loan from China because China don't want to see the feasibility of the projects. They have their geopolitical agenda.
This economic crisis soon shifted to a political crisis when the general public of the island came to the streets against the government. Protests have been started all over the island, especially in front of the Presidential Secretariat, which gained the international attention to the crisis. People believe that economic crisis cannot be settled unless the political culture is changed, and urge the government to step down. In order to come out of the crisis, the country needs to adapt to immediate short-run solutions and long-run economic and political policy reforms. According to the experts, the economy is badly in need of a debt restructuring to gain the lost credibility among the world and to gain the international investors' confidence.
In order to obtain the assistance from the IMF, we have to make debt sustainable. In order to do this, we have to restructure the debt. In addition to that, I know that the IMF will recommend to restructure the state-owned enterprises to the international community. International community, now you know that we need at least $5-6 billion to the normal situation of the country, at least during the coming 2 months.
Implementation of a strong fiscal and monetary consolidation plan through revenue enhancement and expenditure rationalization is a need of the time and should change its over-consuming behavior and shift towards an entrepreneurial and exporting economy.
In the long run, we have to take actions to reform our fiscal and monetary policy. We have to reconsider about the tax reforms, not only increase or change the tax rate, but in order to introduce the proper collection system. You know that in our country there is only very few tax files are there, but you know that there are large number of people in the tax payable level.
Most importantly, through constitution reforms, the political culture has to be changed. Without a stabilized and trustworthy government, Sri Lanka cannot seek the helping hands of international community.
At the moment, in the country, we do not have, legal accepted government in the country. At the moment, president has resigned. The acting president is not accepted by general mass because he do not have mandate to become a president or at least to become a parliament member of parliament. Therefore, immediately political stability must be restored because international community and international agencies are, in the long run, we should set up a mechanism to prevent bribery and corruption. And also, we should prepare our constitution so as to develop our country not for the betterment of the politicians.
By taking serious and immediate actions and adapting to positive policy changes economically, politically, and socially, the citizens and the international community believes that the island can be made a treasure island again.